Okay, so with that talk out of the way, yeah. So today's topic is all about food, specifically the kosher view, or the Jewish view on kosher, which is the Jewish diet. So they say two Jews, three opinions, but there's one thing that all Jewish people agree on, and that is that we love food. That's something we all agree on. As demonstrated. Well, this is a pretty poor demonstration, but you'll forgive us. You come for Rosh Hashanah, you'll get a proper demonstration. Um, so there was, we'll start with a joke. There was one time a couple, Moshe and Miriam, eating dinner together. And the wife says to her husband, she says, Moshe, what happened? You don't love me anymore? When we got married in the earlier years of our marriage, you always gave me the bigger portion of brisket and you took the smaller one for yourself. And now you took the bigger portion for yourself. So Moshe's like, no, of course I love you. He's like, you don't understand. You cook much better now than you used to. So Jewish people are obsessed with food. In a way, if you look at the Jewish calendar, it looks like a recipe book. You've got apples and honey cake. Then you've got the latkes and the sufganiyot. Then the hamantashen, then the matzah ball soup, and then the cheesecake, and then this and that. The Jewish calendar is literally like one big recipe book. So Jewish life evolves around food. Also, if you think about the life cycle events, whether it's a wedding or a bar mitzvah or this or that, there's always food. Even a class, even a lecture, there's always food. So we're going to learn about the deeper meaning of kosher, which is the Jewish diet. Why Jewish people are so obsessed with food.
The Muslims are being kosher as well.
Yes.
Is that a different meaning, or does it just mean that it's made in accordance with God's will?
Yeah, so kosher primarily refers to food, but from there the term kosher extended to like good, permitted, that stamp that it's okay. So it became it adopted a more loose translation, kosher meaning okay. Yeah, like people even speak about like their taxes, is it kosher? Have they done everything, correct? But the origin of the word kosher is specifically applies to food being being kosher. The right way, yes, exactly. Yeah. So we'll open up. If I can, I'm gonna go around the other way around this time. Have you got would you like to read the opening paragraph? When we eat.
We literally become what we eat. When we eat, we take physical substance and absorb it into ourselves. Its molecules bind with our molecules. The proteins and vitamins they contain become the building blocks of our bodies, and the energy locked within them drives the engine of our lives. We literally become what we eat. And what we eat realizes its potential through us. This explains stages, is why food and diet play such a dominant role in the practice of Judaism. The Jewish calendar is a calendar of foods: the wine, the halak, the weekly Shabbat, the matzah and bitter herbs for the Passover, Seder, all dipped in honey on Rosh Hashanah, links on Shabbat, latkes, what's that word?
Eat a potato, the fried potatoes.
And Ganiot on Hanukkah.
Depending on the jelly donuts.
Oh, okay. Haman Tasken. Say again, sorry? Haman Tashen.
Yes.
All major life cycle events, marriage, brit, bar, and bat mitzvah are celebrated with a festive meal. Even an ordinary meal on an ordinary day is a sacred event, preceded and concluded with a berach.
A blessing.
What's the word?
Bracha is a blessing, yeah.
An approach with mindfulness and purpose.
Okay, so that is basically pretty much a synopsis of what we're going to learn about. But we're going to actually go through in a very sort of orderly fashion. We're going to start with the very basics. What is kosher? So first of all, there are certain, so when we talk about food, there's different categories of food. For example, so you've got, meat and dairy. Then you've got, eggs and milk, and then you've got processed food, and you've got food that are made from grains, and then you've got fruits and vegetables. So you've got many different categories of food. So first of all, we're going to start with what items of food are kosher, but then it's not so simple because even once everyone knows, obviously, pork is not kosher and, cows are kosher. But just because cows are kosher, it doesn't mean that if you go to Sainsbury's and buy a piece of meat that it's kosher because it has to be prepared in a certain way. And even within the cow itself, certain parts of the animal are not kosher, even though a cow generally is kosher. So we'll go through step by step. We'll get bit of an overview. So let's begin with the very beginning. And again, the reason why we're learning this week is actually because the Parshat HaShavua, the weekly Torah portion this coming week, is the week where it speaks about the laws of kosher, most of them. So it lists in this week all the signs of a kosher animal, kosher birds, and the kosher fish. That's all in this week. Okay, so Isabel, would you like to read one?
Split foods, fully divided and choose its cud. That animal you made. These are the animals you made. Ox, pig, goat, deer, gazelle, fallow deer, wild goat, antelope, wild ox, and mountain sheep.
Okay. So what are the two signs? Everyone knows the two signs of a kosher animal is chewing its cud and split hooves. Now, there is a spiritual symbolism. What's the reason why those are the signs of a kosher animal? Seems interesting. Like it seems a bit random. So spiritually, there's a symbolism because based on what we explained before, you are what you eat. So the food that we take in is what type of person do we want to become? Because the food becomes a part of us. So the first thing is having split hooves. Split hooves shows that there's a balance between the left and the right. So instead of just having one hoof, it's divided in two, left and right. So in Kabbalah, it's something we've discussed many times. There's the 10 sfirot. So there's the chart of the 10 spiritual forces or energies, which both there exist in God and also within each human being. So for example, there's on the right side is love and kindness and compassion. And on the left side is restraint, discipline, and, holding back. So those are those are both different characteristics that are important. But if you only operate on one mode, let's say someone who's just a nice guy, so he says yes to everyone and everything, ultimately that can lead to some bad things happening or bad decisions. Because imagine you just say yes and a child comes to you with a knife and you just say yes, 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 then he can harm himself. So sometimes taking away the knife from a child, which is restraint, it's discipline, you're being harsh with them, you're saying no, but that's really an act of kindness because you're doing it to protect them. So having only extreme kindness is no good, and having only extreme harshness is also no good. Having a balance of both shows that you're truly a person who serves God. Also, another thing is that we all have our natural tendencies. Some people are naturally, their personalities leaning towards just being more easygoing and more kind and more giving and generous. Some people, their personalities to be more disciplined and more harsh. So if you only apply one approach, then you don't know that what you're doing is really for the sake of God. It could be you're just using your natural tendency. But when you have a balance of both, that means that you're doing truly for the sake of God, because you're balancing both. That means that you're definitely doing something that's not your personality, because your personality is usually one or the other. But when you balance both, it shows that you're actually working on yourself to adapt both. That's in terms of the split hooves. That's the symbolism. Chewing its cuds is the idea of like thinking before you speak. Like the animal chews it once, spits it up again, and then chews it again. So it's before you just go out and do something or make a decision, or whether to always think over twice. Is this really the right thing? Is this really the right thing to say or to do? And those are two spiritual qualities that we want to have. And that's why that's just the spiritual symbolism, why those are the two signs of kosher animals. So that's referring to animals. Now, moving on to the next one is fish. Isabel, do you want to read one? Sorry, have you read that one already? Yeah. So you're on 1.2.
Regarding fish, any fish that has fins and scales is kosher. Any fish that has scales also has fins, but there are fish that have fins without scales.
So this is something really fascinating. It says in the Talmud. So we know the two kinds of fish are fins and scales, but the Talmud says a rule. Every single fish in the world that has fins automatically means that they also have scales. But there are some fish that have, sorry, every fish that has scales definitely has fins. But there are some fish that have fins but don't have scales. It's interesting. That's written in the Talmud thousands of years ago. Since then, there's never been, they've not found one type of fish that has scales and no fins, meaning what the Talmud said was is still currently till today verified as true. So therefore, this has an actual practical ramification. If you're going to the store and you just want to buy a piece of fish, so if you can see scales, even if you don't see the fins, you know it's definitely kosher because obviously the fins were just cut off. But you can definitely eat it. That's why you can go to the store and buy a kosher piece of fish if it has the skin on it, because you know that it's definitely kosher. So you need to know that it has scales, yes. The one exception is like salmon, because of the color, you know definitely that it's kosher from the color. But other than that, if you know that it's a kosher, if it has, because of the color of the fish, has a unique color. So we know that salmon has fins and scales. So you can buy, see, normally if you just want to go to the shop and buy a piece of fish, if it has the skin on it, then it doesn't need to have a kosher certification because you know it's for sure kosher because it has the scales.
Salmon, even if it hasn't got the scales.
Even if it doesn't have the scales, so if it's like already skinned, you can still buy salmon because you know that because of the color, you know that it's definitely
But salmon,
that color of salmon. What?
but salmon has typical fish that look exactly the same.
There are other fish that look like salmon?
Rainbow
Trout.
trout, yeah.
Okay, so
But
then
it's-
It's the same, but it's a
Not really.
It does.
so seafoods like shellfish, crab, lobster, shrimp, obviously are not kosher.
Salmon,
Go.
white salmon and the rainbow trout looks exactly the same.
Okay,
The
so
rainbow
then
salmon looks dull because it's not swimming very quickly like wild salmon.
right. So kosher fish includes salmon, cod, tuna, sea bass, trout, and tilapia. Those are some examples of kosher fish. Now, next category is so I also want to say another interesting fact about the animals. The Torah actually lists only 4 animals that have so between the chewing its cuds and having split hooves, the Torah lists you have to have both of them to be kosher. But if it has only one of them and not the other, then it's not kosher. So for example, the pig has split hooves, but it doesn't chew its cud. So one of the symbolisms why that's not kosher is because we learned in Pirkei Avot is that one of the qualities a person has to have is to have integrity, which means that your inside should be like your outside. Don't display yourself one way, but then inside you're something else. So the pig, the Medrash says like an analogy that the pig comes and he's like, oh, look, I'm kosher, I've got split hooves, because that's like what you can see externally. But inside, what you don't see, inside, it's no good, it's not kosher.
fish. The fins
and scales. Oh, what's the meaning of it? I'm trying to remember offhand what it is. There is a spiritual symbolism to the fins and scales. Can't remember offhand what it is, but I'll get back to you on that. Okay. Now, so another interesting, like for the zoologists there, the Torah lists 4 specific animals that have one and not the other of chewing its cuds and split. One of them is the pig that has split hooves and doesn't chew its cuds. That's the only animal that has split hooves and doesn't chew its cuds. And then it lists 3 others that have the other way around or that have a not fully split hoof, only a half split. And again, since it was written in the Torah, they haven't found any other animals that have one and not the other, besides for those 4. I think one of them is like a type of rabbit or things like that. They're listed in this week's parsha. You'll see if you read. Okay. Now, what about the birds? What are the signs of a kosher bird? There are none. Rather, the Torah does something different. Instead of giving you a sign, the Torah just lists the names of the birds that are not kosher. And then you can deduct that anything that's not on that list is kosher. Problem is, the Torah was written in Hebrew thousands of years ago, and since then, we've forgotten, we don't know exactly what those birds are. There's a lot of been different disputes and arguments, and so let's read it. Oh, okay. So, Avi, the next one about birds.
I have a question about listed, so stated in the Torah. The Torah listed only the forbidden species and the remaining birds are permitted. Some said that one may not eat any bird unless there is a tradition for food that is kosher. This is the custom and it should not be changed.
So what that means is that different communities had tradition. They knew which birds were eaten, so they knew for sure those were kosher. But then all of a sudden, you're living in some country and there's a new bird that arrives, and like, well, we don't know what that bird is. It might be kosher, but because we don't know what those birds are, so we don't know for sure. One of the examples of this was Turkey. When Turkey just came on the scene in I don't know, Eastern Europe, whatever, they hadn't necessarily known what it was. So some people, some families or communities decided they're not eating turkey. But generally speaking, among the Jewish community, it was accepted that turkey is kosher. So most people, so turkey generally is kosher, with the exception of a few families, specifically people that come from the dynasty of the Shalah. Shalah was a rabbi who lived, I don't know where, but about 300-400 years ago. He's a famous rabbi. He wrote in his will that he doesn't want any of his descendants to eat turkey. And I had actually in school, in my classmate, anyone with the last name Horowitz. His last name was Horowitz. Many people today with the last name Horowitz are descendants of the Shalah HaKadosh, a very famous rabbi. He wrote that he doesn't want his descendants to eat turkey. But aside from that family, turkey is kosher. The other birds that are definitely known to be kosher are chicken, turkey, goose, duck, dove, pigeon, pheasant. I don't know, has anyone ever eaten pigeon? It's very, yeah? Okay. Yeah? Well, it's kosher.
It's strong. Quite strong.
Birds of prey as well.
Very good. Yes, correct.
You're not allowed to eat birds of prey.
All the birds of prey.
Why the duck?
Yeah, duck is kosher. So all the birds of prey, correct. So that's where we're going to go to now. Very good. So up until now, we spoke about what species are kosher. But if something is kosher, it doesn't mean that it's kosher. Just because the species is kosher, it doesn't mean that the actual thing is kosher, because so
Need to catch or grow and
so now here we're going to learn about, so it's called slaughter, or in Hebrew it's called shechita. So Alex, you want to read the next one? 1.4.
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, the verse states, "You shall slaughter as I commanded you." This teaches that what's about the wild pipe and
The wind.
and that one must cut the majority of one of them for a bird, and the majority of both for an animal.
So it says in the Torah, this is one of the very cryptic verses. It says you should slaughter the animal as I commanded you. If you upload the whole entire Torah into ChatGPT and you say, please, where is the reference when it says as I commanded you, slaughter as I commanded you? Where does it say the details of how that is done that God commanded? Nowhere. Doesn't say it anywhere. So the Rashi, the commentator, says this is one of the references to the oral Torah. God is telling Moses, he commanded him, he told him over the details orally, but the written Torah goes hand in hand with the oral Torah. This is one of the proofs of it, actually, because in the written Torah it says, slaughter as I commanded you, but the details of how slaughter should be done is not written in the written Torah. It was transmitted from God to Moses and then passed down from generation to generation orally until eventually, as we learned a few weeks ago when we spoke about the diaspora, until Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who's the one who actually said this quote, he was the one who compiled the oral Torah in a book called the Mishnah. And over there, he wrote, what are the laws? Shechita, number one, has to be from the neck. And number two is that you have to cut through, for an animal, majority of the two pipes, the windpipe and the food pipe. And one of the other details of shechita is that has to be used a knife which is extremely sharp. The knife cannot have any dents on it, and soon we'll see the reason why that is. It's in order to have compassion for the animal that we want it to be in the least painful way. There's actually multiple reasons, but we'll speak about that soon. So what we see first of all is that there has to be slaughtering. Now, in addition to that, there are certain parts of the animal that are not allowed to be eaten. So, Stuart, you want to read the next one, 1.5?
You shall not eat any forbidden fat of an ox, sheep, or goat. Therefore, the children of Israel do not eat the sciatic nerve, which is on the hip socket, until this day, because he struck Yaakov's hip socket at the good Hanasher.
Yeah. So, actually, I want to mention, it's not actually written here in the text, but there's a book called the Book of Chinuch, of Education. He compiled the reasons for all the commandments. So he writes about the slaughtering. What's the reason for it? He says a few things. First of all, that he says it's known that when you slaughter an animal from the neck specifically, that is where the most blood comes out the fastest and the easiest. So we're doing that for multiple reasons. Number one, we want it to be the process to be as painless as possible, as fast as possible for the animal. Number two, as we'll see soon, there's a prohibition against eating blood. And the reason for that is because it says the soul is in the blood. Both a person and an animal, every living species, its life force, i.e. soul, is in its blood. And therefore, it would be cruel and it would be wrong to eat the blood, which is why we'll see soon that there's a process. Part of koshering meat is to remove the blood, which you're not allowed to have the blood. So that's the reason why he said that's the reason for the mitzvah of slaughtering. Now, what are the parts from the animal that you're not allowed to eat? So there are certain fats that are not allowed to be eaten. These are typically the parts of the fats of an animal that in biblical times, in temple times, would be sacrificed on the altar. It is very complicated to know the exact, some fats, like when you just have a cut of meat and there's fat on it, that doesn't mean that it's not kosher. You're allowed to eat majority of fats. But there are certain parts, specifically in the back half of the animal, that are not kosher, and it would require extreme skill, and it's very expensive and very difficult to remove the fats that are not allowed to be eaten while leaving the other pieces of meat. So therefore, traditionally today, when you buy a kosher piece of meat in the kosher meat house, what they do is they actually cut off the entire back half of the cow, sell it to a non-Jew, and they don't actually eat it because it is too difficult to remove, it's too difficult and expensive to remove the fats. In addition to that, there's also the sciatic nerve, which is a separate prohibition because of the story of Jacob. You know the story of Jacob when he was fighting with the angel of Esau? And then there's a story in the Jacob, and he was running away from his brother who hated him, and his angel, Esau's angel, came and fought with him till the morning, and he kicked him in his side, and then he was like limping. So because of that, he said that any of his descendants of the Jewish people should not eat that specific limb, the sciatic nerve. So that's why if you go to a kosher butcher, you will not be able to find cuts of meat like the flank, what is it called? Sirloin, fillet mignon. So those cuts of meat are not available. No, I'm reading in my notes.
Filet mignon.
Sure, those, because they're not from the back of
They're not? Sorry, I'm not so, I don't really know all the different cuts of meat. It could be maybe that's near the sciatic nerve, maybe?
The lamp, you know.
Right, yeah, I think it is.
Because the lamp is further back.
The rump is in the back, yeah.
The bottom.
Sorry, I'm not, I don't know the,
I think they call it portion, do they, where they do cut out everything and you can have
I
it.
think that,
Yeah.
I think even the lamp is.
In Israel,
is kosher.
in Israel.
No, we're not saying it's not kosher. We're just saying that there's a lot of fats there, so that are not kosher, that are not allowed to be eaten. So therefore, unless a very skilled person can take them out, yeah,
Are already available in all the kosher shops.
I think
They
it's
are?
more unusual
All
colours
of
than
them
that.
starts.
okay. Well, I stand corrected.
The economy of size in
I
Israel.
would investigate. Yeah. So yeah.
But then near where it's the rest. as well.
Mm.
And there's probably lots of tight, small muscles that are very fiddly there as well. It's much big, if you back really, so it's easy.
Yeah.
There's probably things that are connected there that you can, I don't know, not
I actually have a friend who does this for a living. This is his job, so I'll ask him. Okay, so the next thing, so we're not allowed to have is blood, and I explained before why, because the blood is the soul is in the blood. This is verse 1.7. Ben, would you like to read? Sorry, 1.6.
Yep, I can do that.
Make it louder. There we
It
go.
says, you shall not eat any blood in all your dwelling places, whether from birds or animals. The sages found no method to remove the blood except with salt, which naturally draws it out and dries it.
Yeah, so this is part of the process of koshering. Once you slaughter it and you take out the meat, then the meat is salted to remove the blood.
Of osmosis, isn't it? Just takes out water, not blood.
Both, all mixture.
But wouldn't it leave some blood cells?
So whatever's left after salting is not considered
So it could
blood.
start off.
Yeah. So it's allowed to eat. So like when you actually cook a piece of meat and there's red things coming out, it's fine. If it's a juice, yeah. If it's been salted, then it's whatever's left is fine. Now, this is also one of the reasons why it's customary that when we use eggs, we check the eggs for blood spots because we don't want to eat a blood spot. And if you find the blood spot, you can either remove the blood spot or just throw it away. But we don't want to eat blood in eggs either. Now, okay, so now we've established which foods are kosher in terms of like animals, fish, and meat. But now we know there's another famous kosher thing is we don't have cheeseburgers. We don't mix milk and meat. So let's go on to the next text, which is back to you, Deborah. Yes.
Do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. It is stated 3 times. One teaches a prohibition of eating, one teaches a prohibition of benefit, and one teaches a prohibition of cooking. From the Torah, the prohibition applies specifically to cooking. Rabbinically, however, it is forbidden in every form.
Yeah, so we actually touched upon this a couple weeks ago when we were learning about the laws that are chukim, that means the laws that don't have a reason. One of the laws that don't have a reason is kosher, really, meaning mixing milk and meat. And even though we do it not because it has a reason, but we said that still we have to try to understand any reason that we can give. And many of the like the Rambam, Maimonides give different reasons, but that's not the core reason. It's not the reason why God gave us the mitzvah. Rather, it's an added on reason after. But the main reason is just because God said so. So, for example, one of the things about not cooking a goat in its mother's milk is because that is cruel. To use milk, the very substance that is used to nourish the child, and to cook it. Now, you asked last time, how do we know that this applies to all milk and meat? If it says in the Torah, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, then why can't we say that it just means literally that? But other than that, we can have a piece of meat with milk that's not its own mother's milk, right? So I researched it. It's in the answer is it's in the Mishnah and the Talmud. It's from the oral Torah is the answer. If you just read the biblical, the written Torah as it is, you won't be able to deduce that necessarily. But many, many other things as well, you won't understand if you just read the written Torah without the oral Torah. It's like you only have half a picture. So, for example, mezuzah, you have no idea, or tefillin, you would have no idea. The tefillin that we have nowadays, there would be no way to understand how to actually make tefillin and what it looks like, because the only thing it says in the Torah is you should put a totafot on your head. Who even knows what totafot is? That's the Hebrew word for tefillin. So it's only because the oral Torah explained what it is, or the example of mezuzah, where it says you should write it on your doorposts. So some people that took the biblical, the written Torah literally, they actually engraved the words of the Shema in the doorpost itself, instead of taking a scroll and attaching it to the doorpost. So the written Torah goes together with the oral Torah. So the rabbis say the following. When it says gedi, the Hebrew word for goat is gedi. The rabbis say the following, that if you're a biblical Hebrew expert, anytime it actually refers to goat, the Hebrew word and the word that's used in the Bible is gedi izim, together. When it just says gedi, it means a baby animal, but not necessarily a goat. It could also mean a sheep or any other baby animal. And
Chicken.
no. So read the next one, 1.8.
I've heard quite recently that there's a side issue on that, and it's towards forbidding incest as well, putting the child with the mother.
Yeah.
And it's sort of
Yeah.
extrapolates towards
Yeah.
that. So there's sort of a hidden meaning behind it.
Mm. I think if I'm not mistaken, Maimonides also says that in ancient times, this was a practice of idol worshippers. They would do things like that. And therefore, that is another reason why the Torah is saying not to do it. So if you asked about chicken, so read 1.8.
The prohibition of eating meat from wild animals and birds with milk is rabbinic.
So so we don't eat chicken with milk either, but it's less stringent if you want. It's only rabbinic, it's not a biblical. Why? So this is what the rabbis explain, that when it says don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, what it means when it says its mother's milk means it's talking about the category of animal, meaning animals that give milk. Chickens don't have milk. That's why chickens are not included in this prohibition of mixing chicken with milk. Rabbinically, they added it because they wanted to make an extra safeguarding, because nowadays people consider chicken and meat to be very similar categories. Like people who are vegetarian won't eat meat or milk. Or even in Hebrew, the word for chicken is basar of, which basar means meat. So chicken is very similar to meat. So the rabbi said, you know what? If people say that you're allowed to eat chicken with milk, then people might become confused and also eat meat with milk and think that only you're not allowed to have a baby goat in its mother's milk, right? So basically what they say is that what this verse means, it don't cook a baby in its mother's milk. It doesn't mean only its mother's milk, but it means the type of animal that we're saying is the prohibition applies to is an animal that has milk, meaning any type of animal, not chicken.
The Talmud does.
So this is what I'm telling you is a passage from the Talmud that explains this.
There are like rabbis who say yes. And
Right. No, there's no argument about this. There's no argument about this. It's all opinions agree to that. This is part of the oral Torah that explains.
Build it. Talmud, so build it in one.
Yeah, in some places you have disagreements on different opinions, but about this there isn't. So this is all
The
opinions.
chicken and the thing is actually Rabbi Yossi in the Talmud.
Yeah.
I remember. Say about the chicken is not as
Okay.
It's not as bad as
Right, but about okay.
6 hours is, it's not the period between the morning meal and the evening, no? It's a lot longer than that.
Maybe in ancient times.
very different.
No, but you have lunch.
Yes.
So it's actually very interesting. To answer that question,
Yeah.
so you're saying the time between the morning meal and the evening meal is more than 6 hours. Very, very interesting. We'll soon, and for the end of the class, we'll see fascinating passage.
So it's in the morning, cheesy breakfast.
Yes.
And about 7 o'clock in the morning, then lunch is about 12 o'clock. So after cheese, you need only half an hour. Yeah?
Right. So basically,
And then it means that you eat meat, and then your evening meal is at 6 o'clock. So there's 6 o'clock between your lunch and dinner.
so you can have you can have
Milk again.
milk again. Okay. So the prohibition biblically is not to eat any milk and meat that was cooked together. Specifically, only if they were actually cooked together. But if they were not cooked together, so let's say they were, I don't know, pickled or something else, or some other way that are not cooked, then again, it's not a biblical prohibition. The biblical prohibition is only
No.
um
Together.
You're cooking them
I'm
together.
not asking you personally.
Never-
Give you water.
We should do the Talmud there.
so the answer is biblically it's not as bad. It's allowed. So the thing of waiting 6 hours is a custom. So definitely what one should do is rinse your mouth. And the custom is to wait 6 hours between meat and milk, not between milk and meat. Between milk and meat, some people don't wait at all. They only rinse their mouth. Some people wait 1 hour, some people wait a half an hour. The reason is because when you eat meat, there's two reasons in the Code of Jewish law. It says that some pieces of the meat get stuck in your tongue, between your teeth, sorry. And it can take up to 6 hours till it's fully removed, or it can like chewing your cuds, it can like sort of burp back up after you eat it. Till it's fully digested, yeah. Okay. Next thing is another really important aspect of kosher, and that is insects. Did someone mention insects before? So insects are also all insects are non-kosher. And that's the reason why we're careful when we eat specific like vegetables that have a lot of infestation. We check them. In Israel, there are some places where they actually grow them in greenhouses where they are pretty much insect-free, which is very convenient. Nowadays, certain foods like broccoli, certain foods have more. Actually, the KLBD is they have a list of all the different types of vegetables, and they tell you which ones are more infested, less infested, and what is the proper way how to check them for bugs, either through like washing them with water or with some soap, sometimes with salt water. There's different methods. You rinse them and then you search the water to see if there are any things. Unfortunately, a lot of the insects are very, very difficult to see because they're almost a camouflage. Like for example, in the green leafy greens, they'll be the same color, like the tiny green things. So the different, the easiest way is actually, you can, if you go to the kosher shops, you can buy like lettuce or stuff that's already pre-checked and then you don't have to worry about it. Or you can just check it yourself. But that's another element of kosher. So that's actually one of the reasons why people ask, well, can I go to a vegan restaurant if it's not kosher? There's no meat. So like, I go, and the answer is, well, maybe it's still better than eating not meat, but it's still not kosher because of a few reasons. One of the reasons is because all the vegetables weren't checked for insects, at least to a kosher standard. And there are other reasons as well, because we don't know if the utensils and stuff that were used, what else was made, if there were non-kosher food that was made on them, etc., etc. So it's not so simple.
I didn't eat for 2 weeks there.
You didn't eat for 2 weeks.
Until I found like about the
Wow.
Angalo. And because most of them are vegetarians,
Yeah.
most of them are sick regularly from eating this vegetarian food.
Because of how.
Because they that's it. It's still frozen.
Could be the water.
It's water, it's milk, it's
Funny enough, for my last trip to Israel, my auntie taught me my grandmother's way of getting rid of them and explained exactly.
Of getting rid of the.
worms. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
because the worms as well, and she explained
Yeah.
to me, she said, it was great how my grandmother did it, and I know that, and then
Yeah.
I'll be passing it down.
and salty water.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes. Yeah, sure.
So I saw some Israeli show and it was a drama, but there was a big hoo-ha because someone had put milk into a flowsheet fridge.
Oh,
Even
no,
though it was
that's fine.
sealed, is
Yeah.
that
Perfectly fine if it's, yeah.
okay? So you don't have to have a separate fridge as long as everything's sealed.
Correct. We do have separate dishes because dishes you're eating, anything that you're eating hot food in, then we'll have separate dishes. But if it's cold, anything cold, it doesn't matter.
Also glass is more convenient. Like dishes they're made of glass, which is not absorbed.
On the contrary, glass does absorb. It's difficult to take out you can't kosher glass.
Glass is part of it, isn't it? You're going to have milk or milk on glass.
Not if it's hot. No, not if it's
No,
hot.
it's not.
No.
Of course, modern things are glazed anyway, so it shouldn't suit me. But
So at home you have meat plates.
Yeah.
Cheese plates.
Yes. Yeah. These are all meat. We eat very little dairy, so like most of our kitchen is meat. Then we have like very small dairy, just for the kids for like pizza and cereal and milk. That's pretty much all yeah.
You have an issue with pizza, haven't you? You love pizza.
The kids do. Yeah, for sure. Everyone loves pizza. Why not? but actually,
Standing up as an example.
oh, I see. Yeah, is it? I don't. Okay. So
Using the pizza is less harmful than meat to humans.
yeah.
I don't even going to come across it, but the thing that always amazes me is that you can eat locusts,
Yeah,
which
true.
There's a restaurant in Jerusalem that's called.
That's one of the things, the locust, where it relies on tradition.
You can eat what?
Locust.
locust. Yeah,
The Torah,
this is a strange thing.
Yeah, but locusts, it does say that they're kosher, some of them. But again, that is one of the things that relies on tradition. So only the communities, because we don't know what type of locusts are kosher and which ones are
Yeah.
not. So certain communities have a tradition which locusts are kosher and they eat them, but mainstream, most Jewish communities don't have a tradition and don't eat them. But there are a few select communities, maybe Ethiopians or wherever, that they have a tradition that they were kosher. Okay.
This is also on animals. Not all the animals that written here are kosher today.
For example, giraffe
But it's not
is
written
kosher.
here.
Yes.
It's kosher, but it's not written here. But nobody actually,
Well, it's kosher because it has split hooves and chews its cubs. That's why it's kosher.
nobody knows how to.
No one knows how to slaughter it because of the long.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Yeah. Woodall, what's the name of the animal? Woodall?
Not sure.
Reindeer.
Reindeer.
Okay.
This is
Yours is kosher, yeah, yeah,
Nobody eats reindeer.
yeah.
You can't find a shochet that,
Is it because it's just not worth it? It
what
doesn't.
do you mean it doesn't work it? It doesn't happen.
It's just not something that you find.
Well,
You can't find reindeer, a kosher reindeer today in the world.
So why is that?
I don't know,
well,
because tradition,
probably.
because there is no tradition
Reindeers in the
of
Middle
eating
East.
reindeer anywhere.
Is reindeer different than deer? Because deer is kosher. Deer is kosher.
Deer is kosher, but nobody eats deer.
Because they wouldn't have come across a reindeer.
There are
You know,
many-
there's a
there
similar
are
thing
many
with
of them in.
pigs as well. I believe there weren't pigs in the Middle
There is
East,
no
therefore
shochet
that's
that
a
will slaughter
quite a
the
strange
pigs.
thing.
Check it in
Also,
But it says clearly in the Torah not to eat
that's
pigs.
right, but also, yeah, but
Not only
very
because there
few
were-
of them.
But
So,
that's
right.
not the reason. The reason why we don't eat pigs is not because it was something that wasn't common, or even because it was disgusting, or whatever it was. The Maimonides, and he writes all of these things. He writes that pigs are very. He writes a lot of things that they're.
Well,
Yeah, but that's not the reason why we don't eat it. The reason why we don't eat it is because it says in the Torah not to eat it.
absolutely. But there's also another reason why that may have come about, because a pig has all its organs
Yeah.
from its snout, which is different than its tail, but they're all in exactly the same place as a human.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Really?
And also, if a pig stood up, it would be at the same height, average height as a human. So it's very close to humans, and it's nearly cannibals.
One day the pig will be kosher.
Yes, true. That's why in Hebrew, yeah, well,
Say again,
But
yeah.
the pig will be kosher.
It says when the Messiah comes, the pig will become kosher.
Right.
And that's why in Hebrew, the name for a pig is chazir, which means it will return. Sha'atid yachzir et hachazir. It will, in the Medrash, it says that the chazir, which means the pig, will be returned to us, meaning it will be kosher. Maybe it's connected to the thing of the human thing. It will be, I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so to be honest, we've actually gone way too far on this. We've only finished one section out of 4. So
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to go through this really quick. So the next question is why? Okay, so till now we were speaking about like the what is kosher, but then why? So one of the verses that keeps repeating in the Torah again and again when we speak about kosher is make yourselves holy because I am holy, and also a way of distinguishing yourself as a Jewish nation to be distinct, going back to what we spoke about last time about being the chosen people, that we're different than the other people and not to assimilate and intermingle too much. Food is one of the most common ways how people mingle with other cultures. It's also what makes different cultures unique. You know, you go to Italy and they've got their cuisine. You go to Chinese cuisine is very, very much a part of what makes a people and a culture and a nation unique. So this is sort of the holy version of this is our diet that God gave us, and this is what makes us different and special. So this is the verse 2.1. Ben, would you like to read 2.1?
Sure. Do not make yourself disgusting through any creeping creature that creeps, and do not become impure through them, for you will become impure through them. For I am Hashem your God. You will sanctify yourselves and be holy, for I am holy.
And then read 2.3.
Various reasons have been offered for the Torah's kosher dietary laws. Some point out the health benefits or the adverse spiritual effects of consuming animals with a violent or predatory nature. Others dwell on the unifying effect these laws have on a dispersed people. But perhaps the most basic reason is presented in the Torah itself. in the closing verses of its chapter on the dietary laws. Sanctify yourselves and be holy, to differentiate between the impure and the pure, between the animal that may be eaten and the animal that may not be eaten. To differentiate means to defines the human being's uniqueness as a moral creature. Morality, holiness in the Torah's terminology, is the capacity for setting boundaries, to live one's life with the understanding that there are things to be embraced and things to be rebuffed. Elements of creation to be developed and elevated, and elements that are beyond our ability to gainfully utilize. Sometimes the undesirability of a substance or activity is so obvious, but if that's where it ends, we would be little more than cows avoiding the poison ivy. The true test of morality is when we accept that there is an objective yes and no in God's world, dictated not by human reason or utility, but by the creator and master of reality.
I'm going to sort of whiz a bit quickly through the next parts, but because we did touch upon this when we had that lesson about the commandments that have no reason. We spoke a lot about kosher, but there's a category of commandments that are called chukim, which means these are decrees. It's almost like a decree from God. Unlike the other category of commandments like honor your parents and don't murder, those are the sort of the moral and laws between civil laws, those are things that are rational and logic. But then you've got the whole category of like don't mix milk and meat and wool and linen and kosher and some of the holidays and eat matzah. And these are things that are a bit beyond human logic. We do them because God commanded, it is a decree. But Maimonides says that even though it was given as a decree, we have to, as much as possible, try to understand them and come up with a reason in order that we can have more of a connection to the commandments. Because if we're only doing them as a decree, they're a bit external to us. Whereas if we're able to understand them, then we can internalize them with our mind and heart. And so some of the reasons for kosher, we spoke about this last time, but I'll mention again. The chinuch, which was he was the medieval sage that I mentioned earlier, who has a book where he speaks about the reasons for all the commandments. He says a very interesting one. He says that kosher is a more healthy diet. And he says that, nowadays, if you ask a modern doctor, they won't be able to explain to you why kosher is necessarily healthier than non-kosher. So he says that God concealed from us the reasons why certain foods why the non-kosher foods are less healthy for our body, for the Jewish body, and why kosher foods are healthy, because he didn't want that people should start mixing in and saying, oh yeah, this was only, let's say we say pig is not kosher because, in ancient times it was uncommon. Then people will come today and say, yeah, well that applied, thousands of years ago, but nowadays things changed, we're in different cultures, and the reasons don't apply, so therefore the commandments don't apply anymore. So in order that we shouldn't come and make those excuses, so to say, so God he says God, who is the ultimate healer, he's the one who really knows. So he concealed the reasons from us, but ultimately he's saying if you just trust God as being the maker of the world, it's a very interesting analogy here. It's like imagine you buy a new car, and you look at the manual, it says this car uses diesel or petrol or whatever. So you're going to trust the manufacturer of the car to know what is the fuel that is suitable for the car, because the manufacturer made it, they know what fuel the car needs. I'm not going to come and say, well, I think petrol is cheaper than diesel, so I'm better, for the environment, so I'm going to do petrol. Well, you might destroy your car. So the same thing is if we say that God is the manufacturer of the Jewish body, and he is telling us in his manual, this is the fuel that you should be using, then if we would be smart, we would trust that. So that's an interesting analogy, way of looking at it. Another thing is you mentioned before about the predatory birds. All the predatory birds are non-kosher. So there, the famous expression, you are what you eat. When you eat something, it becomes part of your blood and your flesh and part of you. So when you eat, it's an interesting way of looking at it. When you eat a piece of meat or whatever it is, it becomes a part of you. It might not be noticed. It might not be noticeable to us. But what the Nachmanides says is that when you eat food of an animal that is cruel, you ingest cruelty in you, and that becomes a part of you. It doesn't mean that you eat a thing and then the next day you're going to be an evil person. We're not saying that, but ultimately, it's about being sensitive about what we're ingesting, what we're taking inside of us.
Talk in general about olive. So, for example, if a person eats animals kosher animals, is more than a person that is vegetarian and is like, I don't know
So,
how to describe it, but
Hitler was vegetarian.
Absolutely.
right.
so I actually,
More like,
Yeah, but that's, I think it's not true. It's what they say.
now, now here is a,
they're softer, they're easier to manipulate.
Well, vegetarian. Probably a third of the world is vegetarian.
here's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have kosher food that's so unhealthy that it's not kosher? Meaning, is it kosher to eat candy? Sorry, don't look at the table. To eat something that's technically kosher because the ingredients are kosher, but it's so unhealthy. Or another example is, let's say, to just be very, what's the word? To be very, no, the opposite. Someone who's really glutton, very gluttony,
That would be.
right?
What is that?
Someone who's like, in Hebrew they call it chazir.
That's it.
Chazir. Someone who just eats, you know, is that kosher? Meaning, is it just as important to eat healthy as it is to have something that technically has a kosher?
I think it's not kosher, it's not, there's even talk about manners in eating.
There's no way
Like
that.
how you should eat,
Yeah.
how you should say, not eat
100%.
with your mouth, not eat with your
So this
head.
is something which I found to be very interesting because it was written by Maimonides 1,000 years ago, and it seems like it came out of a modern
Yeah.
nutritionist who wrote it today. So I would like to read this because I found it very fascinating. One example is, do you know, it's became very popular recently. One of the something called where you basically intermittent fasting,
Oh, yeah.
where people will basically they'll only eat between like there's different ways to do it. They'll only eat, from 12 till 8 p.m., or whatever it is, different ways to do it. So it gives your body more time to rest.
You don't eat for 18 hours.
18 hours.
You have 6 hours, you eat a couple of
Yeah.
times. and do
You
this.
eat 1 or 2 meals.
Does that.
So here's a look at,
Don't miss breakfast, really.
and what about, the importance of exercising? Do you think that was something that was known 1,000 years ago? Oh, yeah. So let's read, Isabel, do you want to read 3.4 from the Rambam? This is the laws of character from, yeah.
And sound body is among the ways of God, as a person cannot understand or have any knowledge of the Creator if they are ill. Therefore, a person should avoid those things that harm the body and accustom themselves to those things that impart wellness and vigor. To wit, a person should never eat unless they are hungry, nor drink unless they are thirsty. One should not eat until one's stomach is full. Should stop when one has eaten close to 3/4 of full satisfaction. It's actually a good medical reason.
It's only
It
good.
How do you know?
How do you know it's 3/4?
takes your
No
brain
idea.
about-
Fill your plate and then just eat 3/4 of the plate.
Before you read.
How do you play this?
Yeah.
It takes your brain 20 minutes to
Yeah.
recognize food in your stomach.
Mm.
A person should exercise their body and exert themselves in a sweat-producing task each morning, and then rest for a while until they regain their composure, and only after that should they eat.
That sounds like intermittent fasting, right?
No,
Do your exercise in the morning and then have your first meal. So this is, you asked before about 6 hours between a meal. Well, if your first meal is at 12 p.m. after you've exercised, then it will be 6 hours.
Also, you to eat after you've exercised is you will consume less calories. You will put on less weight. They've discovered.
Right.
Not
But
eating before you.
It's bad to exercise fasting.
No,
Good sweat.
And don't run out, I can tell you. And so much you
But,
can-
yeah, you can't run as hard when you're right. Now here's the most important. This is the most important sentence of it all.
Overeating is like poison to any person's body. Most illnesses that afflict a person are caused by harmful food or by filling one's belly and overeating, even of healthy foods. Thus, King Solomon proclaims in his wisdom in Mishlei 21:23, one who guards their mouth and their tongue guards their soul from distress.
That I found that to be very, it's almost as if it was written
Yeah.
written nowadays, but it was written so long ago. The wisdom of the Torah.
Making these nice, you could mention the vaccines.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, now I would love to just spend, I'm going to try to keep it brief. I think this is perhaps one of the most interesting elements. We're going to go now to the spiritual side of things. Many people ask me, like, what is the Jewish view on vegetarian, is it, what's the word? Vegetarianism and veganism, and is it moral to eat meat and all those things? So we're going to address that now. We're not going to answer yes or no, but there is room for both views. There's there's also room for a balance. So some people have a custom to only eat meat on Shabbat once a week, not during the week. So there is actually, let's actually first read it. So we're going to go a bit spiritual now. We mentioned last time there are 4 categories in the creation. There is the lowest category. In Hebrew, it's called a domem, someach, chai, and medaber. Domem are inanimate objects, which are like things like stone and earth and salt. Then you have someach, things that vegetative, things that grow, like plants and fruits and plants and vegetables. Then you have animals, and then you have human beings. And we mentioned that there is the sort of the ladder of elevation where each thing receives its elevation when it's elevated to the higher level. So, for example, animals will eat, grass or plants, and by doing that, the plant is elevated from vegetative to animal. And then the same thing, when a human eats a piece of meat with the right intention, that's the caveat, in the right way, then the piece of meat becomes elevated from animal to human. And then we spoke about how do humans get elevated. It's by going beyond our logic to faith. But that's a side point. So the question is actually from a spiritual perspective, how can human beings receive satisfaction from food like plants and vegetables and bread? Because according to that ladder of hierarchy of whatever, if humans are on the top, that means that we are the highest. How could it be that we have a deficiency? It's a spiritual question. It's not a physical question. Spiritually speaking, how could it be that human beings are hungry and we have a deficiency, and that deficiency is satiated is by something which is lower than us? Surely we should have to turn to something that's higher than us. How could it be that something that's lower than us, meaning bread and fruits and vegetables and animal, can actually provide something to us if it's lower than us? It's a spiritual question. So the Kabbalah explains it as follows. It says that when a person eats, let's say, a piece of bread and they become satiated, it's not the physical bread that's causing you to be satisfied. It's the spiritual sparks that are in the bread. Remember we spoke about how everything has sparks. So before creation, there was the shattering of the vessels where these sparks fell into every object. And the way we elevate it is through using the physical objects for a higher purpose, for something, for good. So when we eat with mindful eating, we eat to be healthy, to be able to have energy to serve our family and serve God and do the right thing. We're not eating in a gluttonous way. Then by doing that, we're elevating the sparks that are in the food from the level of either plant or animal to the level of human. So then the food gets elevated to our level. However, if one eats with just for pure indulgence, then what happens is instead of the food being elevated to the human level, the human is what's the opposite of elevated? Is demoted to the level of the animal. So there is a story, the Baal Shem Tov, who is the Hasidic master, he was sitting around the table with his students, and he's trying to teach this concept to them. So he told them to all put their hands around each other's shoulders, and they were in a circle, and he put his hands around the 2 students that were next to him to create a full circle. As soon as the full circle was created, they got this vision. And in the vision, they saw a man who was wearing a shtreimel. You know what a shtreimel is? Like the fur hat. And it was a Shabbat, and he was sitting by the Shabbat table, and there was all these foods on the table. There was 5 dips and 3 salads and challahs and 4 types of meat, and the guy was sitting there and he was stuffing himself up. And then they saw a vision, and then all of a sudden they saw an ox sitting there at the head of the table wearing the fur hat. And he said, you know why? He said that person, he's so into the food that he became, instead of the food being elevated to him, he actually became an ox. He became a piece of meat himself. So he's trying to teach this idea to them. So the concept is that when you eat with the right intention, which part of that is making a blessing on the food before we eat, that's how we elevate the food. Then by doing that, we're elevating the spark that's in the food, and that is what's really making us. And then he takes it a step further, and he says the following: when a person is hungry or thirsty, the reason why they're hungry and thirsty is not because your body is hungry for food, it's because your soul is actually sending you a cue that it wants to elevate the sparks that are in the glass of water or that are in the piece of bread or the food. And therefore, that's why when you're hungry, you should eat. The Maimonides said before, only eat when you're hungry, only drink when you're thirsty, because when you're doing that, it means that your soul, you're listening, you're working together, your body and your soul. Your body's listening to your soul and saying, I am hungry, meaning I can, we don't, physically, we can't, we are consciously, we don't know any of this. But spiritually, our soul senses, oh, in that pineapple, there's a spark. I'm going to elevate it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to make a blessing. I'm going to eat it. And by doing that, I'm going to elevate the spark. So that is very fascinating concept. But let's just read one part inside. I'm going to choose
So there's people in life don't eat when you're not hungry. You come back for work or whatever, you're not hungry, your wife made you food. What are you gonna do?
right.
You
You got a good excuse.
Say, oh, look, what the nice food I made for you.
Shalom Bayit is also.
Shalom Bayit.
Yeah. So let's read
Shalom Bayit, peaceful in the household.
Integrity of the family.
and Stuart, would you like to read 4.2?
Okay, it is written, for not by bread alone does man live, but rather by everything that emanates from the mouth of God. With this, a difficult question is resolved. How can food have the power to sustain a human being? After all, bread belongs to the vegetative realm, whereas man belongs to the much more elevated human realm. If so, how can the vegetative realm serve as a source of life and sustenance for the speaking realm, which is vastly superior to it? The answer is, for not by bread alone, that is, from the perspective of the physical bread itself, does man live, but rather by everything that emanates from the mouth of God. This refers to the divine spark, literally, clothed within the bread, namely the primordial divine utterance. Let the earth bring forth vegetation. It is that very word of God embedded within the food that provides nourishment and sustains human life.
So when God created the world and he said, let there be vegetative, that word of God, which again, God, we said word of God is not physical because God doesn't have a body, doesn't have a mouth, it doesn't speak, but it's an analogy. It's that energy, just like speaking is something that's coming from within you, external to the world. You're saying what you're speaking. So it's God's light coming forth, coming out of him into the world, into the vegetative things to create it. And the Kabbalah explains that godly energy is not only something that happened, in the beginning of creation, but it's a constant thing. Those words of God, so to say, that spark, that light or energy of God, whatever you want to call it, is in everything. And when we eat it, that is the calling. Our soul is calling for that to be elevated. And that's why it's so important that we eat. It should be mindful. It should be done with the right intention. As the Maimonides said before, only eat when you're hungry, only eat when you're thirsty, eat for the right intentions. And that's why when someone asks, what's the Jewish view on being vegetarian or vegan? Answer is there's no correct answer because, you can eat meat with the right intention and in the right way, or you can eat it with the wrong intention and the wrong way, and one will be correct, one will be incorrect. So both sides have a very valid point and are correct. So the last point which we want to make is one of the elements of mindful eating is making a blessing before we eat. There's actually something really interesting. I heard once in an interview, I don't remember the source, but some Japanese guru, like spiritual, whatever they call them, what do they call the Japanese spiritual leader? basically had 2 cups of water, and he basically said lots of curses to 1 cup of water. Yeah, like lots of negative things, like I hate you, you're disgusting. And then he said lots of kind things to the other cup of water. And then he was able to see how like the molecules or whatever in the water, and the one that he said bad things to became bad and became like dirty, and the other one like tasted better, something like that. So spiritually speaking, there is some truth into that, and that is when we make a blessing over water, we actually that's how we lift it up. So just to do a very 2-minute overview of some of the blessings we have for food. So there's different categories of food. Just turn this to the last one so you can see on the screen here if you want. Anything that's bread, there's a blessing called hamotzi, which is hamotzi lechem in earth, which means the food, the bread that comes from the earth. This is what we eat. This is the blessing we make before we eat challah on Shabbat. Then anything that is made from the 5 grains that's cooked. So for example, pasta, cookies, cake, that's mizonot. Then we have a special blessing for wine and grape juice because it's so significant in Jewish life. We make a blessing, you even get married on a cup of wine. We do everything with a cup of wine, kiddush and a cup of wine. So it's a special blessing, borei pri hagafen, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Then there is a blessing for all the fruits, which is borei pri ha'etz, that comes from the fruit of the tree. Anything that comes from the ground, like vegetables, is ha'adama, which comes from the ground. And then everything else that doesn't come from the trees or the ground, and it's not one of the grains. So pretty much all the unhealthy stuff, besides for like cheese and milk and eggs, everything, all the processed foods that we eat, nosh and all the bad stuff, that is all, besides for also drinks, liquids, all the liquids are shahakol, which that's a sort of overarching blessing. So if you don't remember what blessing to make, you can just make shahakol on everything. Because shahakol means, shahakol, this is the last one, shahakol ni'abadvaro, means everything came from God's words, God's 10 utterances. That's a sort of overarching one. So if you don't know which blessing, just make shahakol, and you're good to go. That's an easy thing you can do to elevate the food that you're making. You just make a blessing before you eat the food. And that also helps you to have a sort of a moment to just think before you just, the food cut, like you were saying before, that the brain takes 20 minutes to realize. So like to take a moment to just look at the plate and say, okay, this is what I'm eating. This is why I'm eating because, for this reason, to have a healthy purpose. And by doing that, we elevate the food that we're eating.
That's how I eat my diet. Everything that I can to bless, and I say it doesn't do any good to me. Like there's no worth blessing, so I'm not eating it. Like candies and stuff. But sometimes, on spirit, you need to.
You've got to treat yourself.
So if you do the blessing and you believe it's good, then I believe it doesn't do any harm.
On Friday night, sometimes they have whiskey, but they still say how God.
You're not supposed to, no.
No, I said,
Blessing.
No. Whiskey is shahakol, yeah. Yes.
Two things.
It do no harm for me. The first thing from the sauce. But 90% of the times I won't eat it.
And not meat, I don't know, mushrooms.
Mushrooms?
Something like
Mushrooms?
and then I mix it with.
Oh,
But then it will be
mushrooms
like
are kosher.
1 out of
Yeah.
10.
If you have food.
Not magic mushrooms.
Doesn't
What?
look like you eat it every day, right?
If you're not sure.
But why are you asking mushrooms? Mushrooms are, all vegetables are kosher. Oh, okay. You're asking, should you make a blessing on a food if you don't know if it's kosher? It's actually mentioned. I'm trying to remember. It's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. If you know it's not kosher, then no. But if you don't know and you think it's kosher, do you think it's kosher or you're just unsure?
Sure.
For example, what? Like I suppose if you think it's kosher, you know what? I'll actually exactly, yes. Ideally not to eat it unless you really think it's kosher. I want to mention. Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Oh, so say something.
Two
Yeah.
things. I think there's a great big missing of the whole concept of being kosher and killing in a kosher manner. But what about the life of the animal? And it doesn't seem to be discussed. If you're treating animals really badly and you kill them kosher and you say they're kosher, I don't believe they are.
Very, very good question. So I forgot to mention it. I forgot to mention it. There are some laws about treating animals in a dignified way and not being cruel to animals there are actual laws in the Torah that you're not allowed to treat animals cruelly. For example, two that come to mind, these are biblical commandments. Number one, it says that if you see an animal that's carrying a very heavy load, you need to remove the load, not to overburden the animal. Another one, it says that if you have an animal working in your farm, you're not allowed to keep a muzzle on the animal's mouth. You have to allow the animal to eat while it's working, because that's cruel to an animal. So being cruel to animal is not allowed. So these things, like the way animals are treated on these factory farms, is, being cruel to an animal is not okay. It wouldn't make the meat not kosher, but doing that is not allowed. It's cruel. Shouldn't be done. Yeah, sure. It says you have to feed your animals before you feed yourself. If you have pets or whatever it is, if you're a farmer, you need to give your animals first before you feed yourself. On a practical note, I want to mention something that's just really useful. We use it all the time. If you live in, Golders Green, you can go to Kosher Kingdom and get kosher. But if you live here, and you're doing your shopping in Asda or Tesco or whatever it is, it's still possible to buy lots of kosher things. Lots of things are kosher, even if they don't have the kosher, the KLBD or whatever it is on it. So there is an app which you can download on your phone. It's called Is It Kosher? It's from the KLBD. It's an app. It's a massive database. And anytime you're in the shop, if you look at a certain brand of, I don't know, Tesco brand flakes or whatever it is, you want to know, is it kosher? So you open it up. We use it all the time. You type the thing, and this is specifically for the UK. So it's got all the British brands in here. So anyone want to tell me an example of a food that you buy that you're not sure if it's Weetabix, okay? So we'll type in here,
What's the bakery?
Bacon.
Bakery.
Sandwich.
They bake bagels like Warburton.
Yeah,
Warburton.
Yeah.
You check them out, don't you?
Bacon brick lane, bacon shop.
Oh, that's the one.
You know the one?
I used to go there regularly, yeah, when I was working.
That was when I was not working, when I could enjoy it at the weekends.
Okay, so let's put this in.
Big money saving. You don't need to go to
So right here. So I put in Weetabix.
Yeah.
So it comes up cereals, Weetabix. So it says the crispy minis caramelized biscuits, no, but so it tells you which ones, yes, no. So crispy minis chocolate chips, yes. Crispy minis free this, yes, yes. Crunchy Wheaties, no. So most of them are, two of them are not.
I think
So, or what was the other one? The bread you mentioned.
Warburton's.
What things in it would make it non-kosher? Like,
Well-
I know you got the result. 'Cause
Hmm.
it makes sense, like-
So sometimes- Yeah, there are. So sometimes a lot of, especially processed foods, a lot of them will have fats that come from non-kosher animals. Lots of processed things. And sometimes they're also made in Yeah, yes. for cross-contamination from other things. So here, so Warburton's bread. So it says yes to all of them. They're all kosher.
I think there's a new app just out where you just zap
So you can take a picture as well. Yeah.
I think you can just zap the barcode and it tells you straight
Yeah,
away.
you can do that here as
I
well.
think it's just come out.
Yeah, so it is, yes.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, it's got a camera, and then you take a picture of it, and it will.
Can I just say,
Yeah.
these were produced in, late Bronze Age. I mean, people could not be sure of their survival. I mean, and for any sect, any people to say, I'm not eating that, it could be their death. I mean, there wasn't a sustainable source of food at that time.
Just saying maybe
This
the
would be a
reason.
great, much more now, a restriction than it is now.
Explain what you mean again.
I mean that saying I'm not eating that food restricted you on certain foods. In the old days, I mean, you could have drought, you could have crop failure, all
Sure.
sorts of things. So the fact is, we think it's strict now. We may think it's strict, but in the olden times, it was really a hard thing to do.
Oh, you say it was much harder to keep kosher because.
Not so much keep kosher, but actually restricting type of food, because you can't be sure there wasn't a continuous source of food.
Right,
I mean,
definitely.
you're at God's mercy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's not like today when
What if you be say someone was gonna die and the only food available wasn't kosher?
Good question.
You must eat.
The answer is you should eat the non-kosher. There's only three things that you have to give up your life for, and three sins you have to give up your life not to commit.
Mhm.
That is idolatry, adultery, and murder.
No, right.
Anything else, so kosher, Shabbat, Passover, you name it,
Right, right.
if it comes to life and death, you must protect your life above everything
I
else.
believe that you must eat that non-kosher.
Yeah, you must, yeah.
It's
You
not a
must.
matter you can.
You must,
to
yeah.
sustain it.
Yeah, true.
And, yeah, well, that's right. And also,
Because
you
you
could have a
can-
pig's valve in your heart because you know that they are replacing. So, however religious you
Yeah.
may be, you're allowed that because it sustains your life.
Yeah, so imagine if someone is sick and the only cure is to have a medicine which is not kosher. Then you should have to take it.
Because one year, I think it was the children's flu vaccine was produced on gelatin,
Mm.
and the Muslims refused to have it.
Well, what I'm saying is if it's life and death, you know,
Yeah.
so you have to determine whether something is life and death.
Yeah.
I worked with Muslims and they ate animals, and I told them, you know, there's gelatin
Yeah.
made of pigs, and so I don't see it.
You can buy the Asian shops.
All right, Ben, thanks for joining. I'm gonna turn it off now.
Sure. I have a food-related question, but I'll text you on WhatsApp. Pardon?
You go ahead, you can ask.
Oh no, it's not about halacha. It's another food-related thing.
Okay, sure. So
Yeah. So I mean, like I can say now, Grodzinski, the bakery in Golders Green.
yeah.
Yeah. So I've been buying like these. They do these 5-pound bags of stuff they give away at night, sort of leftover stuff. What is your policy on sort of taking food from there? As in, like, could I bring that back to yours or?
Oh yeah, you're asking if we accept their hechsher?
Yes,
We do. Yes, we do.
you do. Okay. Yes.
Grodzinski
The
is one
problem
of
is,
our
yeah,
all-time
obviously it's
favorites.
Canassia, but like sometimes it's not sealed stuff. So, but I think they can tape it up in
Yeah,
the restaurant. Yeah. Okay, I'll send you a message, but I think it could be useful for like hosting all your things because it saves you a lot of money on groceries and whatnot for this.
The thing that the bakeries at the end of the day they sell the leftovers for a reduced price.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I get like 50, 60 pounds worth of stuff for $5. It's great.
Wow.
It's like the whole week freshly baked stuff. Yeah.
They deliver. They deliver.
They deliver to walk-in.
I don't know. I'll see what I can do.
Share the comment.
By the way, I just want to share